It's hard talking to kids about things like the Orlando shooting, and with small kids, you wonder whether or not you should bring it up at all. Although it's going to be on the news, they're going to see it, and they're going to hear us as adults talking about it. Veronica Sites is a traumatic grief counselor who works with Homeland Security a lot. She's helped to notify families about deaths during Katrina and the Moore, Oklahoma tornado and the West Texas fertilizer plant explosion, among others. Her website is conflictresolutionspeaker.com. Veronica, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
It's a sad day for all Americans, and one of the things that's come up throughout the last 24 hours, especially on Facebook, are how do you talk to your kids and your grandkids about what they're seeing in the news and explain the amount of hatred that somebody must have had to walk into a crowded nightclub and just open fire randomly on 100 strangers.
One of the easiest ways is to keep it very simple with children. Hatred is a very difficult thing even for grown-ups to understand and wrap their mind around. So the strongest emotion that a child can identify with is anger. And just keeping it simple and letting them know, when you feel angry, do you ever feel like you want to punch something, or that you really want to say things, and maybe you do, and then later you wish you had not? Anger is an emotion that makes bad choices.
Is there
yeah.
Is there an age limit where kids under a certain age really should be shielded from coverage altogether?
If a child asks questions, it's best to find a simple answer to reassure them that they are safe, that for them there is the security of the adults in their lives present. And for the adults, it's very important. If you tell your child you're going to be somewhere, be there on time, because they may not verbalize, but they will act or react in behavior. They maybe get a little nervous. They want to sleep with you at night. They don't want you very far, and they also want to know exactly when you're coming back.
As far as teenagers are concerned, it seems like teens today are more mature than perhaps they were when I was a teenager. And it's almost as if you could speak to them as adults. You don't necessarily want to spend too much time dwelling on it, but if they have questions, answer them honestly.
Answering is important, and it's a good opportunity to just say, hey, we're going to hang out tonight for a little while. We're going to have pizza around the table. Do something that is going to provide a sense of security, a sense of reassurance, and a sense of them realizing, the love I have here at home, I can count on it. Because it doesn't matter at any age, even the adults and even the victims of the situation right now, the sense of security has been assaulted. More so for those that were there, but for the community at large, for our nation as a whole, it's important to reestablish and confirm where the foundations are stable for people.
I know that some studies after 9/11 found that kids who were exposed to a lot of news coverage around 9/11 15, 16 years ago were more likely to have issues with anxiety throughout their adulthood. Is that usually the case? Should we at least limit how much exposure kids have to news coverage right now, and would the same hold true for adults? I know that I'm sure that a lot of us have been glued to the TV and the radio and the websites that have been covering yesterday's tragedy for the last 24 hours, looking for the latest information and wondering how the investigation has proceeded. Would you recommend limiting the amount of time that even as adults we spend dwelling and focusing on news coverage?
It really is important to limit the time. There's not a reason to sit in front of the TV unless you are a responder or, a journalist that needs to keep up with and be current on the event so that you can respond. There is a big difference between reacting and responding, and too much exposure is reactionary behavior, which if you're an adult and you're telling the child they can be reassured and they are safe in home, but they're watching, observing, and aware that you're sitting in front of the TV, they pick up on anxiety. They begin to wonder, they're telling me it's safe. There's an inconsistency in behavior that's showing them that you as an adult can be okay with the circumstances that they're together.
Tell us about Survivor's Guilt. In the next 2 or 3 days, I'm sure there's going to be 250, 300 people who may have been at that nightclub and hundreds of others who might have gone to the Pulse nightclub in Orlando before and didn't show up for whatever reason Saturday night, that are going to begin to feel a little bit of numbness at not having been shot or not having been killed by the gunman's randomness of the shooting. Is there anything that, and this is something that others experience all the time after Katrina, being from that area, being from the Gulf Coast, I know dozens of people who have had to deal with survivor's guilt. They lost family members and friends during Katrina, and they survived. They lived through the storm, and they feel guilty about it.
Survivor's guilt is very common, and the nail to tack down on the situation is just to recognize there's a purpose. We don't have to understand it, but they weren't there because there's something that this event that interrupted everybody's normal. This event has the opportunity, the possibility, and the potential to radically change their life for the better because they were not there. Now, questioning in the mind why you weren't there, our human nature is to want to help people in pain. Well, the survivor experiencing survivor guilt is in pain, and they'd rather question as to, why did a person that was so good or that did so many things for, other people, why was it them and not me? Because then they're looking at themselves in comparison. And it's really, we are wired to help one another. And when you cannot help, you feel helpless, and we invert or we react by an emotion that we're really not sure how to deal with. So it's very important to, I encourage people to recognize the difference between reaction, which is completely emotional, and responsiveness. Being a responder takes planning, preparation, and then execution towards a specific result that you want.
Veronica Sites, conflictresolutionspeaker.com. Thanks for your time. Kevin Malott joins us next to talk about terrorism and global security.